If I can get your attention, we're about to begin with the ceremony. It's right outside. It's on the lobby. Welcome, everyone. I would like to welcome all of you who came out here to be with Ruth family at the chapel. And this is an opportunity also to welcome everyone watching online. We have some people watching on YouTube, so we welcome all. I would like to begin the traditional way with the words of the 23rd Psalm. מזמור לדוד, אדוני רואי לא אכסר, בינו דשירביצני על מי מנוחות ינעלני. נפשי ישובב ינחני במקלי צדק למען שמו, גם כי אלך וקיצל מוות לא ידע רע כי אתה עמדי. שבטך ומשענתך המה ינחמוני, תערוך לפני שולחן נגד שורדי, דשנת בשמן ראשי כוסי רוויה. אך טוב וחסד ירדפוני כל ימי חיי, ושבתי בבית אדוני לאורך ימים. The words of the 23rd Psalm. Psalm of David. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. Giving me repose in green meadows, leading me beside the still waters to revive my spirit, guiding me on the right path, for that is God's essence. Though I walk through a valley of the shadow of death, I fear no harm, for you are with me. Your staff and your rod comfort me. You prepare a banquet for me in the presence of my foes. You anoint my head with oil, my cup overflows. Surely goodness and kindness shall be my portion all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. So we are all gathered here this morning, sadly, to say goodbye to Ruth Robbins, blessed memory, who was known to the Jewish people by her Hebrew name, Hannah Rochel, but Yaakov Vechaya, Zichrona Livracha. She was the daughter of Jacob and Clara Sharak, of blessed memory. Ruth was the sister of Myra Goldstein and the sister-in-law of Myrna Sharak. Also, the sister of the late Bernie Sharak, Grace Granovsky, and Irving Sharak of blessed memory. She was the wife of the late Morris Seifer of blessed memory. Ruth and Morris had two children. Carol, married to Michael Warsoff, and Lorne Seifer, married to Renee. 18 years after Morris' passing, Ruth married the late Bruce Robbins, blessed memory. Ruth had 6 grandchildren: Michelle, Karen, Robert, Michelle, Rebecca and Samantha, and 8 great-grandchildren, Michelle, Eve, Francine, Max, James, Louis, Miles, and Julian. Ruth passed away in Montreal on October 11th at the age of 102. Today is the 3rd day, the Chol HaMoed Sukkot, the intermediate days of the festival of the booths. According to the book of Leviticus, what distinguishes Sukkot is the mitzvah, the commandment, to live in booths, through which, and I quote the Bible, future generation may know that I made the Israelite people live in booths when I brought them out of the land of Egypt. The book of Deuteronomy adds another layer of meaning to the festival of Sukkot, stating that we understand that this is a holiday that acknowledges and celebrates the blessings of the harvest. What these two narratives have in common is that both agree that Sukkot is a time of thanksgiving. Thanksgiving to God for the protection in the desert, and thanksgiving to God for the blessings of the land. The Rashbam, Rabbi Shmuel ben Meir, a 12th century commentator of the Torah and Talmud in northern France, explains that upon a reflection on the messages of Sukkot, and I quote, "You will become grateful to the one who gave you your land and houses full of all manner of good, and not imagine in your hearts that my own strength and power have wrought all this wealth for me." End of the quote there. This same principle, I believe, should be applied not just to our God. Ruth leaves behind a beautiful family. So this is the time to reflect on all the blessings that Ruth shared with each one of you. How those blessings are, in different ways, part of you. We are saying farewell to a great lady who accomplished so many things during her life. But as we are going to hear in a few minutes, perhaps the biggest gift she leaves behind is all what she has done for her own family. Out of all the meaningful traditions we have in Jewish funerals, perhaps the most important one is the eulogy. The eulogy has biblical roots, as we see that our father Abraham eulogized Sarah, his wife. The word eulogy means a good word. Giving a eulogy is a way to honor a person's life. It is an opportunity to reflect on everything Ruth Robbins gave during her long and fruitful life. It's a way to say thank you for the gift of her life. It's also a way to provide comfort to those who are heartbroken. The eulogy expresses sorrow for the loss, yet it celebrates and finds meaning in Ruth's life. So to begin the process of eulogizing Ruth Robbins, I would like to invite Renee Seifer to come forward to present her words.
Wow. Michael, thank you. Carol, for letting me speak. I'm Ruth's daughter-in-law, and I'm going to make this very brief, but Ruth gave me an incredible gift in all of you. I'm an only child. I had a wonderful mother, and then I lost her, and then I had Ruth. And I think all of you are a testament to her integrity, determination, class, an incredible love, and she was really more than a mother-in-law to me. We had incredible, intimate conversations. She helped me with so many things in my life. She gave me my wonderful husband, and our daughters adored her. And I guess that's the best thing you can say about someone is that their family lived the example that they set. And a special gratitude to you, Carol and Michael. We were far away physically, but close emotionally. I thought of her every day. And the way that you cared for her gave us peace. So thank you all so much, and thank you for allowing me to speak. She was very special, and she'll be with me forever.
Thank you. So next, I would like to invite James Alul to come forward.
Hello, everyone, and thank you very much for being here today. It means a lot to our family that you are here to support us at this time. For those of you who don't know me, my name is James, and I am Ruth's great-grandson. I come to you today from Montreal, along with my grandmother, Carol, my Bubby Ruth's daughter, my grandfather, and my mother, Karen. We are all gathered today to commemorate and celebrate Ruth, or as she was known to me, Bubby Ruth. Bubby Ruth had a very special place in my heart, and still does for several reasons. Since she started being somewhat non-communicative when I was about 7 or 8 years old, I didn't get to have as well of a developed of a relationship with her as a lot of you did in this room. But the few extraordinary memories that we shared and the inspiration that she is to me is why she has such a special place in my heart. When I was about 4 years old, Bubby Ruth lived in an elder center where she was more or less independent. When I used to visit her with my family, Bubby Ruth always asked me for a kiss. But my response was always, "I will only give you a kiss if you can catch me." So, poor old Bubby Ruth had to chase me down in order to give me a kiss in her tiny apartment filled with photos of her long and interesting life. This event is an example of our very short but loving and playful bond. Very sadly, as Bubby Ruth began to age, she was unable to keep that independence. We began to visit Bubby Ruth in her new home at the Elder Care Hospital in Montreal. There, along with my brother, we would sing Yiddish songs to her, the very songs that she had sung with her father in Winnipeg. Seeing her face light up at the melodies and words is one of the best memories that I have of her, and one that I will cherish for a long time. While these memories are very interesting and fun to reminisce about, they are not what I think of when I think about my great-grandmother. What I most admired about Bubby Ruth was her determination to ensure security for her children. As a widow in the 50s, which was a very unstable time for women in the workplace, she plowed through this difficult time and was able to provide for her children, even as she was devastated about the loss of her dear husband and our family member, Maurice, or as we knew him, Soapy. She got a job at the Hudson's Bay here in downtown Winnipeg and made sure her children had food on the table. This hard work and determination, even after such a terrible event for our family, really inspires me and makes me even more proud of my family history. And I think that Bubby Ruth is a perfect example of a feminist in the workplace and being independent. So I think we can find something to inspire all of us in her story. In short, Bubby Ruth was more than a family member. She was a world-class citizen and an inspiration to us all. She has certainly impacted my life, both with the memories that we shared and the inspiration that she was to me. Bubby Ruth will certainly be missed, and her determination, courage, and her charisma has marked us all for eternity. May she rest in peace and her inspiring legacy remain. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I would like to invite Michelle Warsoff to come forward.
I remember it was around 2004, 2005. I was excited for an upcoming small little excursion to a small town in Ontario called Kenora. Kenora, Ontario, which folks from Montreal or Toronto, where I'm living, wouldn't really know. It's a small little town. I believe it was on the water. And unlike my brother Rob, who's in the TV business in California, who travels all over the world making TV shows, I'm not very well traveled. I travel all over Ontario to small towns, to courthouses, fighting cases. And my mother's friend, Marshall Margolis, who was a practicing lawyer in Toronto, referred me this case in Kenora, and I was very happy to go. So I book a flight. I fly to Winnipeg, then rented a car, drove back into Ontario to Kenora. And I stayed at the little hotel called the Kenrisha Hotel. Not a fancy place. It's a small little jurisdiction, small courthouse, small little building, I remember. But it was a pretty little town. I got back, and there wasn't time to see my grandmother at that time. It had been 2003, 2004, before she moved to Montreal, I believe. And I told her about my trip, and she had told me that on her honeymoon in the early 1940s that she went to Kenora with her first husband, Morris Safer, who I'm named for. And she said to me that she actually stayed at the Kenrisha Hotel. So you always wonder about the connections you have with people from the past. We're not really sure what's going on around us. Our connections are sometimes positive, they're negative. We wonder how we know somebody. I feel that I had a strong connection with my grandmother right from birth. She was always so good to me, but it was more than just a grandmother love. There was a strong feeling as if she was truly happy for me. And she was always just so good to me. She was good to all her grandchildren, but I felt that I had a strong connection with her for some reason. Her first husband, of course, died at an early age. I believe it was 1953. He had been 39, 40 years old. He was in a wheelchair for a couple of years before that. And she really loved him a great deal. She truly loved him. I would ask questions about him sometimes, and you could just see the look on her face, how connected they were. I even said to her once, because I'd see pictures of him, and he was always dressed in the nines. I'm assuming that's good, nines. It should be the tens, but for some reason it's the nines. I once said to her, well, you really loved him. I said, who was more handsome, him or me? She paused and said, him. So I took number two. I was her favorite, for the person being alive, I guess. She worked at the Hudson Bay for many years thereafter, and it couldn't have been easy. She was raising my mother and my Uncle Lorne, and I remember her from the 1970s up, always dressed well, never unkempt, always with a smile on her face. And everything she did was with class and quality, which was rare because we all have issues, we all have problems, we're all plagued with certain things, some self-induced, some not. But you see who people are when the chips are down. And people like that really teach us how to distinguish between the soldiers and the complainers. I don't ever recall her complaining about anything. She was a soldier, and I respect her for it. Thanks.
Thank you, Michelle. Next, I would like to invite Michael Warsoff to come forward.
Morning. On July 26th, 1966, Carol and her mother were in Montreal. They had come here for a visit for a week. And on my first encounter, I learned that my future mother-in-law, I didn't know she was going to be my future mother-in-law, but I learned that she was a force to be reckoned with. She asked Carol what my name was, but Carol said it was a strange name and didn't know. We had had one date. I had taken her out on that evening. So the next day I called to find out how Carol was, and her mother asked, first she had said to Carol, how do you go out with somebody if you don't know his name? So when I called, she said, she asked me, how do you spell your name? So she was going to find out who was going to be after her daughter. And her hunch was right, because Carol never went back to live in Winnipeg. Years later, she told Carol that she cried all the way back on the train to Winnipeg from Montreal. Now, sons-in-laws talk about their mothers-in-law, and usually their eyes roll. But in my case, I can say without a shadow of a doubt that I've had a wonderful relationship with my mother-in-law for 52 years. She was indeed a remarkable woman. It was no coincidence that we were both born on the same date, January 24th. So when I would call her to say happy birthday, she'd return happy birthday. Albeit it was 26 years apart, we shared many of the same habits and idiosyncrasies, and Carol began to recognize that, in fact, she married someone very much like her mother. My mother-in-law organized our wedding single-handedly, and when I arrived in Winnipeg the day before the wedding, the two of us sat down to work out the table arrangements. I didn't know 90% of the guests, but somehow we seemed to be on the same page as to where the Safer and Chirac relatives should sit. I remember vividly that we had a wonderful evening together. My mother-in-law was the consummate diplomat. She knew how to get along with everybody, and yet she stood firm ground whenever she wanted to have something done her way, and everyone quickly fell in line. I remember that on my wedding night speech, I referred to her as the general. Of the many fond memories I have of our times together, I will never forget how she would come to Montreal to visit, and that we would sit in our den together for hours at a time in the evening, talking about everything while she sipped her coffee and smoked her cigarette. She was always bringing gifts for us and the grandchildren whenever she traveled. She never forgot a birthday. Every year you could count on her on receiving a card from her with a check enclosed for $25. Inflation aside, $25 every year. All of her grandchildren, Mitch, Karen, and Rob, Michelle, Rebecca, and Samantha, adored her, and she made them all feel very special. She spent the last 14 years or so in Montreal, and for at least half that time was able to spend quality time with our family. Louis and James, her great-grandsons, look forward to seeing their great bubby every Friday at our house for Shabbat dinner. I know that Lauren will be talking about her many visits to California and the time that she spent with his family and how good Renee was to her. After she married Bruce, Carol and I would look forward to our annual visits to Palm Springs, where every night there was a party with her many close friends and relatives. I'll never forget how radiant and beautiful she was at her 60th birthday party at the Racket Club in Palm Springs. She was so happy. But I particularly want to mention the devotion that Carol and Lauren had for their mother. When I first married Carol, she talked about her mother in glowing terms, almost like a goddess. I have to say that at first I thought that Carol was exaggerating, but as I got to know my mother-in-law, I realized what a wonderful woman she was. And as wonderful she was, she could not have raised a more devoted, caring, and loving daughter. When finally Ruth, and although Lauren lived far away, he took every opportunity to visit his mother, and her eyes would light up when she saw him. Only he knew how to make her laugh like she did when they were together. She could not have had a more devoted son than Lauren. It was difficult for both Carol and Lauren to move away from Winnipeg and leave her behind after all the years that the three of them spent together. After Bruce died, thankfully Myrna Chirac was there, her sister-in-law, and she went far beyond the call of duty in looking after her sister-in-law. We are forever devoted to you, Myrna. When finally Ruth came to Montreal at the age of 87, Carol made sure that her mother had all of the help, care, and comforts that she needed. How fortunate she was to have a treasure like Carol. Not many people, receive that kind of care from their children. And it is definitely because of the love, devotion, and support that both Lauren and Carol gave their mother in her declining years that she lived to nearly 103. She is indeed the last of the Mohicans. Her life was not always easy, but she never complained. She lived her life with grace, dignity, style, and panache. She will sadly be missed by all of us. But on the lighter side, and I can't help saying this, I picture my mother-in-law sitting right here today, and I can hear her saying, Michael, you look great.
Thank you so much. And next, I would like to invite Lauren Seifer to come forward to eulogize his mother.
Hi, welcome. Thank you all for coming. Mom would have loved that. This side of this she would have loved. The other part she wouldn't be so crazy about having to be here. But she made it to 102, and she was, when I started thinking about my mother, and what do I want to say about her? You remember things about her. She was a fantastic woman. She raised my sister and I. But I remember moments. I remember being 10 years old with Carol and I in Vancouver going to an auction. My mother saw a lamp that she wanted. So she started bidding. I said, I got $5, he'll give me 6. My mother raised her hand, she wanted the lamp. Guy says, I got $6, he'll give me 7. My mother raised her hand. Guy says, I got $7, he'll give me 8. My mother raised her hand. This went on for about 3 more times, and finally, I think Carol or I said, Mom, you're bidding against yourself. She started to laugh. She says, yeah, but I want that lamp. So, we got the lamp. Cut to like she was 94, 95 years old. I go to Montreal to see her. I try to do that at least a couple of times a year. Unfortunately, my travels let me do it. I took her out for lunch. She wanted to go out. I said, great, where do you want to go? She said, you know that place, which, by the way, is a phrase I'm beginning to understand now. And I said, you mean you want to go to the Snowden Deli? She said, yeah. I said, okay. So we go to the Snowden Deli. I said, what would you like to eat? She said, you know what I said, what? She says, a sandwich. I said, okay. You want, what, a pastrami sandwich? Yeah, I want a pastrami sandwich and chips and a Coke. I said, Mom, pastrami is really not good for you. She looked at me and she had these blue eyes, these piercing blue eyes, and she says, listen, I'm 94 years old and I want a pastrami sandwich. I said, okay, you got a pastrami sandwich. I tell you these stories, I tell you about her because I think it really defines who she was. She had a determination. She knew what she wanted. She was willing to do whatever she needed to do to get things done. And after being left a widow, I was 6, Carol was 9. We had really nothing. I mean, my father had never had time to develop a legacy or any kind of financial stability. So my mother was left to raise us. And raised us she did. Boy, I'm going to tell you, raised us she did. We never really wanted for anything. We might not have had the lap of luxury, but she taught Carol and I to be a family, to be loving, to have values, to have integrity. She was absolutely fabulous, and she brooked nothing from us. If we didn't do what she wanted, never got mad, just didn't talk to us. That was the worst thing in the whole world, was her not talking to us. So when I think back about her now, I think back with just joy and love and happiness that we were so fortunate that she was our mother. So many other women, so many other people would never have been able to stand up the way she stood up and said, we're going to get through this. And we did. And I have to tell you, one day I was talking to her about my dad, because she loved to talk about my dad, Sophie. She just adored that man. And sometimes she would always say to me, she'd look at me and she'd say, you're tata mit bener, which means you're like your father. And she never understood that because I never really knew him. So I said, well, Mom, how did you and Dad, get married? She says, I saw your father walking down Main Street. She said, and I asked, who was he? And I was told. She said, and my friend Bessie Neeson introduced us, and we started going out. We went out for about 2 or 3 years. And finally, one night, I came home from a date with your father, and her grandfather, Jacob, said to my mother, Nu, was machst? What's going to be? So my mother went to my father and said, listen, my dad wants to know if you're going to marry me. She said, my father started to stammer. He started to stutter. He turned bright red and finally said, yeah, of course I'm going to get married. Well, within a year, they were married. And off they went to Calgary to begin a life together. But she knew what she wanted. You did not mess with my mother. And thank God, because where Carol and I would have been had she not been the kind of woman that she was, the strength of character that she showed, the kind of person, the love that she had, her friends that she had her whole life, Auntie Cecile and Auntie Betsy. And because of that, at the end of the time, I mean, she ended up with another wonderful man in Bruce Robbins. And they had a wonderful life together. And then he passed. And once again, my mother, she went off to Israel, worked in the hospitals and the kibbutzes. She did not stop. She knew and taught us life was for the living, and you take it and you live it. That was an incredible gift that she gave us, because she never let us be weak, ever. And Carol, I want to tell you that you, in the years that Mom was in Montreal, the love and the care that you showed her, made her proud. So I thank you all for coming. I know it's a sad day, but it's not a sad day. We celebrate her life. That's her calling, by the way. She wants to know. She wants to tell me, you should have said. Anyway, thank you all very, very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Lord. You see, other than being Sukkot during these days, we are approaching the end of the Torah. In a few days, we are going to start again with it, Genesis. But one of the things that you're going to read at the end of the book of Deuteronomy is Moses reminding the Jewish people that ahead of them there are blessings and curses. But this is the interesting thing, that Moses says once and again, if you want a blessing, you have to remember not just the Torah, but all the experiences that you live in the desert. So what the rabbis learn from there is that there is a blessing in memory. Or in other words, if you forget, you're missing some of those blessings. So it's something that it was very evident today after all the eulogies, how much blessings there is in the memory of Ruth Robbins, Zikronah Livracha, of blessed memory. May her memory be a source of blessing, inspiration, and comfort. Please rise now for the El Maleh Rachamim prayer. El Maleh Rachamim Shochem Bameroimim Hametze Menucha Nechona Tachat Kanfei Hashechina V'ma'alot Kedoshim Kedoshim Uteorim Kezoyar Araki Amazirim Et Nishemat Et Nishemat Chana Rochel Bat Yaakov Vechaya She'alecha le'olama בעבור שאנו מתפללים ביד הצקרת נשמת בגן עדן בגן עדן תהי מנוחתה לכם בלרחמים יעש תראה וסדרכנו אף לעולמים וצרור בצרור החיים החיים את נשמתה אדוני חיו נחלתה, ותנוח ושלום. על משכבה ונאמר Amen. Exalted, compassionate God, grant infinite rest in your sheltering presence among the holy and pure to the soul of Ruth Robbins, who has gone to her eternal home. Merciful One, we ask that our loved one find perfect peace in your eternal embrace. May her soul, bound up in the bond of life, may she rest in peace. Let us all say, Amen. You may be seated. In a few minutes, we are going to proceed in caravan fashion to the Sherizedek Cemetery, located in the corner of Armstrong Avenue and Main Street. If you are coming with us to the cemetery, please remember to turn on your four-way flashers, and please remember to stop at stop signs and red lights. Immediately after burial, we are going to proceed with a meal of consolation in Ruth's memory. And it's going to be at the home of Myrna Sharak, and that is 638 Brock Street. Because we are in the middle of the festival of Sukkot, the rabbis say that there is no Shiva during Sukkot, but if the death or the funeral actually happens during Sukkot, Shiva starts immediately after. So the Shiva will be observed in Montreal on October 23rd and 24th from 2 to 4 p.m. and 7 to 9 p.m. at the home of Carol and Michael Warsaw. That is in 3980 Code the Naged, apartment A21. So now we are ready to proceed with the next stage. That is the transition to the cemetery. And for that, I would like to invite the pallbearers to exit the chapel now and to assume their places alongside Ruth's coffin. Following Sherizedek tradition, immediate family leaves now and proceed directly to their cars. And everybody else, please stay in your seat a little longer. In a minute or so, we are going to exit the chapel, and the tradition is to go directly outside the building and to form two lines through which Ruth's coffin will find its way into the hearse. But let's give another minute or so to the family to proceed to their transportation. Thank you. We can exit now.